Welcome to the Conquer Risk podcast. Manish, I'm pretty excited today because this has been a culmination. We've done several episodes under a series of making of a platform, and in fact the last one we talked about some of the benefits of a multi-manager TAMP, and we're finally able to describe the end result. We've talked about some of our decision processes along the way, but now we're able to talk about our actual decisions and what's coming up. So, in this process, there are a number of great things that we can talk about, and a couple of scary things we're going to talk about, and that's where I want us to dig in. I mean, let's start with the one thing that we've heard, you and I have heard loud and clear throughout the years about multi-manager platforms.
Yeah, anytime you build a product of any sort, you want to get feedback. You want to collect thoughts from your ideal audience, in this case, which is other financial advisors. And the one thing that stuck out literally with every conversation you and I have had with various advisors is the frustration around client service and servicing of the advisor from the larger investment platforms. And that's come up over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, why do you think it's such a struggle? I mean, why is it so hard? Service is supposed to be this thing that everybody is providing better than everybody else. Why do you think it's such a struggle for these firms?
Everyone's in the scale game, especially with the larger platforms. So, you have trillions, billions, sometimes trillions of dollars on these platforms, and they service a certain group of advisors, which are usually, over 200-300 million. The folks that have, 20 to 60 million or maybe 20 to 100 million in that range, unfortunately, they just don't have the amount of service that they need. And I don't blame these larger companies. They just don't have employees or infrastructure in place to really focus on the smaller folks. It's no different than any SaaS product where they get you in the door with these $30-40 a month deals and slowly start pricing you out or getting rid of your level. So I think the struggle really just comes down to the business model of large investment platforms are just not set up to handle smaller RIAs.
So from that standpoint, then let's talk about how we've solved this problem or how we're addressing this problem.
I think first and foremost, I mean, it's a feature of how it's built. And what I mean by that is we're not trying to scale. So, I've said this over and over.
Hold on, time out. I have to say this because if an advisor wasn't paying attention, I think they need to hear this. Wait a minute, we're not trying to be a behemoth?
No, I mean,
isn't that the glory days?
Yeah, and I know everyone sets up their companies to, for this large abundance of growth and private equity and cash out. And I've always felt the opposite. I feel like if you have a good group of employees, yes, you want to have growth enough to incentivize your employees, enough to continuously add to the breadth of services. But if you have a good small group of employees with a good small group of advisors, there's no need to scale up. There's plenty of money to be made and everyone can enjoy their lives. I don't personally want a business with 20 employees. That's 20 more people I have to deal with and that you have to deal with. And it's... No, it's true. It's just we don't want to scale to a point where you lose the fun and the ability to actually help, and so we're not trying to scale.
Yeah, absolutely. I had an advisor ask me this the other day. He's like, "Well, so what happens if you really grow like gangbusters, and is there a cap or is there what's kind of the objective?" And I said, "Look, I want to be clear. I find my passion in helping advisors." Right? If I'm instead having to manage 100 people, that's not the job that I want. That to me, I would rather not do anything than do that. That's just not it. I want to help advisors, and I can't do that if we just sort of throw it out there and let it grow to who cares how big and just keep going. I want it to be focused so you and I can keep doing what we love.
Exactly. And I always told Christopher and I had this conversation, and I told him, the second I have to respond to an advisor's email a week later with that fake-ass apology saying, "Oh, I'm sorry I missed your email, yada, yada, yada," is the second that the doors are closed. because at that point you have too many clients. You have too many advisors on board. And if the service is not there, because we pride ourselves on service. If you email us, we are going to email you back and we're going to solve the problem. Or we're going to tell you, listen, give me a couple of days, let's get this done. Because you and I are both cut from the same cloth that the biggest pet peeve is just flat out ignoring people. And so
I got to say, you had a great example just a couple of days ago. I got to throw this back in there. You had a great example of service with one of these very same big box brands that I want to make sure that you touch on.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I have 1,000 examples, to tell you the truth, but this one was with someone in our industry, and I had login issues, and I don't take this lightly. I'm pretty tech savvy. I tried different things, and so 3 weeks went by. I said, look, I'm not getting. Once I log in, it's not loading properly. It's just not working, and it's not responsive. Can we do something about this? Look into it. Recreate my login, whatever it may be. And the response was, thanks for reaching out. Please contact your internet service provider to help with this problem. And lately, when I get dumbass emails, I just respond with LOL and move on, because there's nothing you can do. And I don't blame the person. It's just they don't care. They probably have 25,000 of those emails a day complaining about something. So, but it just goes to the point. So the other thing that I think is important, and you're taking the lead on this role, is staggered onboarding, i.e. not necessarily, being greedy and saying yes to everything. Why don't you explain the staggered onboarding?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've created a transition process that has 5 phases, and each advisor is part of that. They're in the checklist, right? So different things depend on different things as we walk through those steps. And we think it's critical that we stagger how many advisors can come on board so that we can focus on those 1 or 2 at a time and make sure that they are getting full and complete service, while at the same time, and this is something that I've seen so many times, at the same time, we want to make sure that the current advisors that do business with us, in whatever capacity, don't see an interruption in their service. And this is where I point at the cable model, and I've always said this. The cable companies, right? All the deals, all the service, all the everything goes to those new clients. And it's like they've forgotten the obvious. In almost every business, the cost of acquisition is more than the cost of servicing. But yet they forget servicing entirely, lose customers because they're so busy trying to go after the new ones. So we're taking a different approach, and that is making sure that we limit to 1 or 2 or 3, depending upon size, at a time, so that we can stagger those and make sure that service is quality, top-notch, on both the new transition for the new advisor as well as the existing advisor, who may also be doing business with us in whatever capacity that is. So
yeah, I think that's important to it's a good point. You can't forget that you're funded by your existing clients and not chasing shiny new objects.
Shiny new things. And that's part of where one of the first phase of our transition is discovery. And without going into too much detail there, it's about understanding, and we have a thorough process on understanding what the advisor actually is doing right now, what managers they're using, what portfolios they're using, etc. And making sure that we're both in agreement that everything is good to go before we take actual steps of agreeing that yes, the transition will take place. Okay. So again, that's just a mark of service, right? Know who you're working with, know their name, know something about them, right? So
all right, what else you got?
All right, so as we move forward, let's talk about some more exciting things since we've solved that problem. Seamless operation. I mean, from prospect to client, that's one of the things that. And who knew? We started this before COVID happened. Who knew that being an electronic capability or having 100% digital capability was going to be such a thing? And that's where we start this next point, right? It's really about from prospect to client through the life of that client. You can have, if you choose, 100% digital experience.
And this
so the robos don't have anything on us.
This solution came from years of frustration and us not being able to deliver on what we wanted to deliver. And let me explain that. Let me unpack that one comment.
Yeah.
We have tried for years to allow for advisors to create a proposal, then open a new account. That's it. Those 2 things we've tried to do. And
Yeah.
it's been next to impossible when you look at other advisors. Everything is designed for one advisor and their own book of business. But to come in and create a prospect, give them a proposal, digital onboarding signature from start to finish has been elusive. And everyone sells you whatever they want, and they sell you the sizzle, but still to this day, it's hard. So this has been a huge sort of success story for us to be able to deliver this entirely digital process. So how it works essentially, you can get a prospect in the system, get their risk score using a 7-question system, and then immediately dive into the onboarding process through DocuSign and multi-custodian, in addition to any RIA paperwork you may have that's separate from our paperwork and the custodian paperwork.
Right. I want to add a little piece to that. You do the risk questionnaire and so forth, right? There is a built-in proposal system, and what I think is kind of cool about that is that it's not just a proposal system like, okay, choose manager A plus manager B plus manager C, and then here comes the canned report. You as an advisor can create a couple of different excuse me. You can create a couple of different templates if you like, so that maybe for most of your clients it's a pretty short and simple proposal, but you also happen to work with an engineering firm, and so a number of your clients, want to have more nitty gritty. They want to dig in more, and so fine. You can also have a template for that more thorough proposal, right? It gives you the ability to choose what you're kicking out. It is not just a canned system.
Correct.
The second thing I want to point out here is that the part of the reason that we are so excited about this is because everything is being built together. What's that really mean? What it really means is, we've talked about this before, it's not a bunch of integrations. It's not a bunch of plug and play on the back end. And then, integrations sometimes work, sometimes don't.
No.
Those sorts of things.
No. Integrations never work. They just don't work.
I agree with you on that.
And if they do work, they send name and email over like I'm supposed to dance around in enjoyment because you send over 3 pieces of data. Like they don't work. And so the all-in-one solution, even if it gets you to 80%, is better than whatever nonsense is sold out there, because integrations simply don't work. To that point, the next big benefit, I think, from advisors is our ability to deliver the financial planning aspect of this side by side with their investments. Because we are big believers that integrations don't work, you're able to set goals, run the financial plan, and then within that, see how they're meeting those goals with the investments, since they're all sort of side by side with each other. What are your thoughts on that one? Because I know you dove into this.
Yeah, absolutely. I've done some excuse me. I've done some financial plans with this system, testing it out, getting familiar with it, and I'm pretty psyched because, of course, it's not just let's say, it's just basic financial planning. Look, one of the things that's pretty cool when you think about financial planning side by side with the actual investments, there's a third component that could be easily overlooked, and that's account integration. Not integration. Oh my goodness. Here I go with that. Aggregation. There's a big difference. And so having your financial plan with the aggregated accounts, like the checking account, the savings account, the car loan, the mortgage, right, all those things that are live fed in, is a pretty cool component to add, setting side by side with their actual investments. I mean, in the end, that's what the clients want, right? That's what they expect from so many other things in their life. So if you, the advisor, can provide to the end client that nice, simple, consolidated process, you have truly provided value far beyond, as a money manager, any kind of performance that we might have, right? That's a totally different discussion. But you're simplifying the client's life. And when you can do that, man, you are king or queen in either case.
Simplicity breeds clarity, and investors want that. And so the ability to lay that out, and then also see, what assets are held away that may provide an opportunity. Also, to look at how you craft your investments, because if you're fully invested in something, less aggressive, and they're holding cash somewhere else, it just gives you a better view. I'm not going to say holistic
Yeah.
because that's my least favorite word in our industry, but something like holistic in terms of getting their full view. So what else you got?
We'll take the word holistic and throw it over there with comprehensive off to the
Yeah.
side. Anyway, I think the last piece that we want to touch on is something that is a big differentiator between what we are offering and what you find from the majority of the bigger box brand name third party or multiple manager platforms. And that is the OCIO capability. And the first question many advisors are going to ask is, well, what's OCIO, right? The Outside Chief Investment Officer capability. I am here shortly. We'll be releasing a blog post that will go into that in more detail as well. But essentially, the basics that most of these platforms offer is the fact that they're doing some level of due diligence to determine what managers are available. But that's where it stops. And that's a big failure in our industry. In short, I think it's kind of a dirty little secret that there really haven't been access to the tools and the education for advisors at the advisor level to understand how to put a good due diligence process together. And therefore, not only how to choose good managers, but also what managers combine well and how to combine them. And so that capability is something that we are offering. You're not going to sign in as an advisor and see 500 managers, even if that's how many are available. Instead, we're going to work with you to determine, A, what's your list for transitions, right? So we can make sure that the clients get over in a simple format. But then moving forward, that ability to work with us to say, okay, you have a new need. You want to optimize your portfolio combinations, or you want to change a manager or add a manager, and why? Well, I'll help narrow down the field. Our team will narrow down the field and say, hey, here's a couple managers to look at that will do that, right? That ongoing conversation capability, that access is something that other platforms just simply don't offer. Very few of them do. And if they do, it's often at an additional cost. So
Yeah, the important part there, from our experience, is we've seen the advisors that struggle the most when it comes to picking managers and staying patient are the performance chasers, because they are constantly moving around, trying to find the next outperformer. And where this type of
right.
service is really helpful is by diving into the details. For example, if you combine 4 tactical managers who are all risk off and you get a 40% bounce off a low, chances are, all 4 may not participate. And if your client starts on a certain day, you're going to set bad expectations. So it's important to combine and find the right mix to hit on those client goals. You don't want everything in one style. We've always told people, diversify your trading styles, diversify your managers, but how? And advisors
Right.
used to pick, the advisors we're more familiar with, they used to pick stocks and mutual funds, and they wanted to get out of that game and use third-party money managers. But now they're going back to the game of picking now those managers and how to combine them. So we feel strongly that this service will be helpful to at least provide guardrails, a guiding hand to say, this is why we think maybe, manager A, who's a little bit more passive, works really well with manager B, who's a little tactical. And we think that's the holy
Right.
grail. And the last point I want to make here is it's independent of revenue sharing. And I think that's important because I've seen a lot of, the gold lists or the platinum list they provide of the top money managers are usually the ones that also support their conferences and or provide revenue share. There's nothing wrong with revenue share. There's nothing wrong with supporting conferences. We've done it. But make sure that that's not, that's disclosed. That's not the top list because you think these are the best money managers. It's because of something else. And so we are steering clear of that, or obviously completely disclosing it as well.
Yeah, and I want to repeat a bit of a point that you made, which is, in reference to performance chasing, right? As I said, the tools haven't necessarily been available. I mean, look, if an advisor wants to go spend 20 grand on Morningstar, they can start doing some quantitative work. But the reality is, the primary tool the advisor has been given by the very same platforms that they're trying to use to simplify their business are nothing but performance filters. So without having a conversation to to understand the qualitative and quantitative components coming together to do something, the only thing they've been able to choose from are the performance filters. So should we be surprised that they end up in kind of getting stuck in that rut?
That's a great point.
Not really.
That's a great point.
So
yeah.
that's the independent advisors of this world. Like you mentioned earlier, let's say under $100 million, they don't have the tools, the capabilities. They don't have necessarily the full service offered to maybe a larger producing advisor, and that's unfortunate because they have good businesses. And so that's the target that we're looking for, are the folks that have good businesses, the 20 million, 30 million, 50 million, etc., that have good businesses, they have good staff, but they just need to simplify this process. Get good OCIO services. Get a good process where we are truly an extension of their office because we know their name and we know what they're doing and working together. That's the fun part. I mean, I think you could probably, if you're watching, you can see it. If you are only listening to the podcast, I think you can hear from Manish and I both that this is the passionate that we find in this business, is helping advisors do this. And in the end, you grow faster, right? As an advisor, your team is actually happier because they've got a team that they can rely on. And the clients in the end win because they've got a better process, a better solution set that's being offered to them, and it's all being simplified and aggregated. Notice I made sure I used the word aggregated this time.
All right. What recommendations do you have this week?
All right. Well, I have to extend a bit. Last time I recorded a podcast, I recommended the Native Titan fishing kayak. It's a pedal kayak. But that in and of itself is only as good as the tools that are added to it. And I have to add the micro power pole. It's actually the mini power pole and an anchor. And that is essentially set up so that with a push of a button, I can drop an 8-foot anchor spike down into the ground and therefore stop the boat. And it's cool because it's all a lithium battery powered. It's got its own battery pack. And, anytime I'm in, 6-7 foot of water or less, I can just hit a button and stop the boat and it's not going to go anywhere. And that allows for much better fishing. And when you're standing up and so forth, it stabilizes the boat a bit. So it's a pretty cool deal. It's not cheap,
Okay.
but
Well,
it makes it much more fun. And it's quiet. That's the other thing. You don't want to scare the fish.
Yeah. I'm sure some people will appreciate this recommendation. I have no idea what you're talking about, but yeah. And you're not going to have any idea what I'm talking about in a second either. So this is the joys of recommendations. So mine this week is something that I've owned a lot of. This is probably one of the most elitist recommendations I've made, but it is a Bob's stroller. And for those young parents out there, you know exactly what I mean. They're not cheap, but they're those, big old jogging strollers with 13-inch rims or whatever the hell you want to call them.
Oh, and, hold on.
I got a double and a single.
I gotta bang my head on the microphone.
Yeah, I got a double and a single, and it's like a parking lot in here. And
you need more than that, brother.
Those are amazing. So I highly recommend those for any young parents. Don't be a cheap ass. If you can afford it, spend the money. You'll be glad you did. So that's all I got.
Cool. Well, on that note, we're excited to have further discussions. Anybody who has questions, certainly reach out to us. You can use the Connect page, subscribe, enjoy our podcast, and we look forward to further conversations along this line. I think that'll do it for the making of a platform. We are getting close to launch and excited about it. So thanks for listening and watching.
See you later.
Bye.